Okay, good evening and welcome to Shiva YouTube Table Enabled. Today we're doing Siman Kuf Ayin Ches 178 in Orach Chaim. Talk about halachas that really relevant, really apply a lot of times when you're sitting to eat a meal. Ezed Dvarim Kruyim Hefsek Basuda. You're in the middle of a meal. Are you allowed to get up and walk anywhere you want? And if you do, you go to a different place. You have to make a new bracha, both a bracha Achrona and a new bracha Rishona. Let's get into it. Aleph, you're eating. You're going to see bayis doesn't mean in one house. It means even in one room. You got up and you went to a different room. Now, when you made the bracha on the food, whatever food you're eating, you didn't have in mind to go to the other room. But you went anyway. Or even if you went outside the door, your friend came at the door, knocked at the door, you went outside to talk to him a little bit outside the threshold of the door. You're no longer under the roof anymore. Since there's a shina makom, sarich levarich lemafrei al masha'achal. When you come back to the room you are, and you want to resume eating, first of all you have to make a bracha achrona. Unless you're eating bread, so you say birkas hamazon, and then you want to continue eating. V'chozer mevarach b'tchila amosi. Then you say amosi, and more sudas, and then you finish your meal. If you were in the same room and your friend called you a different room, even though it's a big room, big ballroom or something like that, you don't have to make new bracha because you're in the same room. It's not called a shinoi makom. Haga, the Ramos is I the command spin reisha and gimelim daidai to lechel makom acher lamikri shinoi makom hush yushnei makom is bayasecha. As I mentioned before, that even according to this, now the beginning, the first opinion that we're learning over here in this sif, and also in Sif Beis, the beginning is the Rambam's shita. The Rambam would hold that even if you were in one room and you planned at the time of your bracha to continue eating bread in another room, therefore then you can go to the other room and not even make a bracha. You don't have to bench and you don't have to make a new bracha. It's only, however, if you left, even if you had in mind to go outside, once you're walking out of your house, the roof that you're under, and you go outside, open air, or even if you have two houses that are connected, but there's a tunnel between them, and they're under different roofs. Once they're under a different roof, then you have to, even if you had das, it doesn't help. You have to go ahead and make Berachos Hamazon. You have to really go back. Berachos Hamazon are supposed to make in the place where you ate. You go back to where you ate, make Berachos Hamazon, and then when you go to the new place, you make Hamotzi and start again. Let's say people were sitting down. Now, I think they was talking about a wedding. They were sitting to eat a meal, and then, Chassan and Kala are in the Yicha room, and then the Chassan and Kala come out to dance. So not all halls, maybe some places, some halls, maybe this is the way it should be, that, you should have a private room for a close family and close friends to have their meal. You shouldn't invite 500 people to your wedding for the meal. That's really expensive. You have a separate antechamber over there, a different room, a side room. Small meal, and then the Chassan and Kala called them to the big room where all the guests come to dance with them. So you go to join the dancing. And if some people, let's say old people, they don't go to dance, so they should, but they don't go to dance, so they're sitting there. Even though it's a shini makom, it's a different room, even though it's under one roof, right? Since they're still sitting there, you don't have to make a bracha because you're still part of that group because some of your group is still there. But if all the people got up and left, then again, when they want to leave, they have to make birkas hamazon. And they have to wash again and start again. Similarly, even if it's not a bread meal, they're just drinking together, alcoholic drinks, or even water, or payros, they're eating food. Once you do a shini makom, you ended your meal. You have to make a bracha achrona and make a new bracha rishona when you want to start again. Like you mentioned before in Sif Aleph, that if you're going in one big ballroom, one corner to another corner, that's considered one area. And therefore, it's not a shini makom. If you're outside, you're under a fig tree. I guess they have some shade, and you're sitting on one side of the fig tree. And then you decide you want to move to the other side of the fig tree, on the opposite, behind the tree. That's considered a shini makom. You're outside. Once you're outside, even a small place, right? Because if people ask you where you are, I'm on the eastern side of the tree. Now, on the western side of the tree, that's considered a shini makom. Because under the sky, right, if you're under one roof or in one room, so that unites the two things together, the two places together in one room. I don't know where the lights went out now. And if you're outside, so then even a small place changed from one side of the tree to the other side of the tree, you have to make a new bracha. This is all the sheet of the Rambam. The Rama adds it. Everything we said until now is the subject of dispute. Shinin Makom is like we're going to learn in 179, Kufay and Ted tomorrow, that Shinin Makom is like a Hesach Hadas. Hesach Hadas means it's just another type of where I'm forgetting about that I'm eating and I'm resuming, right? My mind got diverted to something else. So it's like that, which is more lenient. So therefore, if you do a Shinin Makom, we're a little more lenient, meaning you went to a different room and you didn't have in mind to go to that different room. So therefore, you just have to make a new bracha rishona. You don't make a bracha achorona when you leave. Right? That's only if you didn't leave people over there. This is important, meaning it has to also be that you ate something which is shahakol or bora peridam. It's where the bracha achrona is boring nefashos, because the bracha achrona is alamichia or for zayin minim, or certainly for hamotzi, right? Those things we're going to see later on in Sivav. It's machlokas. Everyone agrees that if you eat bread, you have to go, even if you left your place, you have to go bench in the place where you ate bread. Some poskim say even alamichia, and some poskim say not only that, even zayin minim, which is not where there's not bread, you have to go back. That's the most machmir opinion in terms of this. You have to go back. So if you're eating something which you have to go back for, so then obviously then it doesn't make a difference. Neither did Shinin Makom, since it's a place where you have to make a bracha achorona in that place. You never really left that place, so you don't have to make a new bracha even if you go somewhere else, because you really have to make a bracha in that place. You never left. So therefore, according to the Rama, which is basically the opinion of the Rosh and the Tosos and the Rashbam, you don't have to make a new bracha. He interrupted his meal and he went to a different room. His friend called him outside to the door. You don't have to make a new bracha. This is important because if you eat bread, even if you leave the house, now this is halacha even applies if you leave the house. The bread, according to everybody, you have to go back to the place where you ate the bread to make birkas hamazon. So therefore, even if you leave the house and you go on a stroll with someone and you have in mind that you're coming back, let's say 15 minutes, so you're already kavua in that place. So even if you go outside your house, not even under one roof anymore, you wouldn't even make a new bracha rishona. The Rama concedes that if you have a hesach hadas, like for example, your mind diverted, you took a long walk, or you went to the bathroom, like the poskim say, right? You did defecated. Then we're going to learn you have to make a new bracha rishona. Well, not a new bracha achorona. It doesn't matter whether you went to a different place and then you went back to that place, or you went to a different place and you finished there, right? If you have to make a new bracha, you make a new bracha. If not. And that's the minhag. The Rama says that in summary, at the end of the day, because we have the sheet of the Rambam, and the Rambam seems to say that you can't even go to another room if you didn't have it in mind there. And if you do go to another room, you have to make a new bracha, a bracha achrona, and a new bracha rishona. You shouldn't go to another place without making a bracha. So therefore, he recommends if you're going to go to a different room, if you're going to go from one room to another room and you had in mind when you made the bracha, so then there's no problem. But if you went ahead and you went outside, not under the same roof anymore, so the advice of the Rama, even though let's say you're eating bread, you would have to make a bracha if you came back, or even if you went to a different place, a different house, you would have to make a bracha. Still, you should make birkas hamazon before you leave, because we're concerned you might forget to come back and eat. So you have to go to shul, and time for tefillah comes. So you don't have a time to make birkas hamazon. Like I remember when I was living in America, I was by my parents for Shabbos. We'd go to the early mincha over there. Almost always the early mincha would come in the middle of the meal, the Shabbos meal. So we wanted to make that minyan. So we ran out of the meal and we benched when we came back. That's okay. Gimel yesh misha omer shemayak gan verotza lechem miperos kol ilan v'ilan kevan sheberach al ilan echad eno sarach levarach al acher. If you're in one garden, you're in garden in Gan Eden or something like that, and you're eating from all the different trees, all the different fruits. So if you're in one yard, meaning the garden belongs to one person, make one bracha on one tree. You don't have to make a bracha on the other trees. Again, when you're under the open sky, so the halachas are more severe. So therefore, you have to have in mind that you plan on eating in that garden. If you want to go from one yard to another yard, even if there's no walls around the yard, it's a different yard. Under the open sky is completely a different thing. So even if you had in mind to go to a different yard, it doesn't help if you go to a different garden and you have to make a new bracha. When you get to the next garden. Let's say you ate bread at one place. And then you decide you want to go to someone else's house. Sukkah hopping. Right? You're only going to bench in the second place, even though normally you have to make a Birkas HaMazon in the place where you ate. But since you're eating in both places, so you could make a Birkas HaMazon where you finish. We learned previously if people are on their way and they're walking around, people will go on a bus or something like that, go on a day trip or a road trip. So they start eating bread in one place, they start driving somewhere else. So when the place where you finish, that's where you make Birkas HaMazon. Hey, we mentioned before that according to the Rosh and the Tosos and the Rashba, who we paskin like, or Mekel, we usually paskin like them over the Sephardi post like the Rambam. So they hold that if you're eating something that is ton bracha m'koman, then you have to make the bracha achron in that place. You have to, even if you left that place, you have to go back to make it in that place. Like if I eat some chocolate and then I go out of my house, I can make the bracha achrona or in the street. However, if I ate bread, I have to go back to my house to make Birkas HaMazon, unless it's extenuating circumstances. So some say, the Rambam says, Shivas Haminim Tunim Bracha Lacharem Koman. If you have olives or you have grapes or something like that, you have to go back. And some say only talking about things like mazonos, things made out of wheat or barley, only those zayimin. And some say only pas. This is what the Beis Yosef says in the name of the Rashba, that only bread you have to go back. And then afkamina being for what we said, the accepted halacha is that if it's something that's ton bracha m'koman, you have to go back to eat in that place. So therefore, that's kovei your makom, and therefore, even if you leave the place, you don't make a new bracha when you resume eating. Vav mishin iskar, generally accepted halacha, I think, is definitely bread is considered ton bracha m'koman. I think even mizonos you have cake or something like that, but I don't know. I think it's a suffix whether we say if you're having grapes or something like that, whether that's considered m'koman. It's better to avoid that situation. Vav mishin iskar b'soch suda. Shelo ispalel. You remembered in the middle of your meal you didn't daven. I'm a bispalel. Afilu mean show stigmar sudasel bispalel. Even if you have to, right? There's no time to finish your meal. We talked about starting a meal, right, before mincha or, when you have a lot of time to daven, right? So you have to start a meal, even a big meal perhaps. I don't know if we talked about it in the halachas here. We talked about it in Masechet Shabbos, in the Mishnayos we do. So you're in the middle of eating, and now the time is about to pass. Time for mincha is about to pass. So even though you have to get up and daven, you're not allowed to eat anything. You're not allowed to continue eating until you daven. The fact that you have to daven now is not considered a hefsek, and therefore when you daven, you're not allowed to leave your place. But even if you daven in your place, it's not considered a hefsek, and you don't have to make a new bracha when you resume eating. Zayin Adam Shiyashem Esok Sudas or Shnas Ara Lo Heavy Hefsek. If you doze off in the middle of your meal, it's not considered a hefsek. The only time sleep is considered a hefsek if you deliberately went ahead to your bed and slept for about a shnas keva. Usually it's an hour. The post can say you went to bed, you slept an hour in the middle of the meal. Then you have to make a new bracha. If you have to go to the bathroom, also, it's not considered to be a hefsek in your meal. In terms of Netilas, I said before, I think I mentioned earlier that if you defecated, that would be a half steak. I made a mistake. That's only in terms of Netilas Yadayim, that has a chadas. But in terms of your meal, you wouldn't have to make a bracha. So if you defecate the middle meal, you don't have to go make, when you come back to your meal, you don't have to make a new bracha. But if you eating bread, you do have to wash your hands again and make a new bracha on Netilas Yadayim. But you wouldn't Tamozi again. That's the conclusion of today's share. Stay tuned for a revolutionary Ian to lean on, where I tell you that really the Rambam and the Tosas and the Rush, who seem to argue about these halachas, are both correct, and they're talking about two different scenarios, which I think fits in with a big sack of the Achronim. A lot of Rav Yashav, Rosh Hashanah Auerbach, basically according to the Rambam, if you're in your house, let's say I'm sitting in my house, I'm in the living room, I'm in the dining room, and I'm eating a meal. How many times in the middle of the dining room, the woman goes to the kitchen to get food, a different room to serve the food. So if I didn't have in mind the beginning of when I made Amotzi to go into the kitchen, I have to make a new bracha. According to the Rambam, or Choshesh for the Rambam, right? According to the Rambam, you have to make a new bracha if you go to a different room in the house, unless you had in mind. So you have to do Birkas Hamazon. The ones have to do Birkas Hamazon, and then wash again and start a meal again. It's hard to believe. So they all say, Mistama, you're in the same house. You have that, even though you didn't think about going through there, you didn't plan on going, right? Let's say you didn't going to the bathroom. You didn't plan on going to the bathroom. It doesn't make a difference. The Stam Das. This is what I remember my Rosh Hashanah Yaakov Friedman telling me that generally this is what. And I saw it actually quoted in the Dirshu. I use a Dirshu Mishnah Berurah, even though I rarely use it, but whatever they add on over here. But they do quote from Rabbi Yashav, and another contemporary post. They all agree that you don't make a new bracha in that case, because Stam Das of people is to go wherever they are. I'll explain how that fits in. It's not a contradiction to what the Rambam is saying, because I believe the Rambam is talking about a very different case than the Russian. Tosos, stay tuned. Ian to lean on coming up next.